Okay. Thanks, everybody. Welcome to the May meeting. I think it's still May. It's going pretty fast, though. And we've been in session since 5 o'clock, an executive session. And so at this point in time, we'll skip roll call and go right to the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
And a second. It's been properly moved and seconded. Todd, can we get a roll call on that?
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes. And now we're into, while we're here tonight, the recognition of retirees. And I'm going to turn that over to Diane.
All right, well, tonight we have the honor of recognizing our class of 2024 retirees. And I thought it was interesting this year we've got several people with several years of experience, and our total combined of the 13 retirees that are on the list tonight is 320 years of service. So that's a lot of service. It's a lot of years. So what I'm going to do is just call everybody up alphabetically. I know there's a few people that aren't here. So we'll start with Ann Annan, and I haven't seen Ann come in, but Ann is an intervention specialist at Naven, and she's retiring with 23 years in the district. Next on the list is Sherry Bowserman. Sherry is currently an alternative kindergarten teacher, or the alternative kindergarten teacher at Naven Elementary, and she is leaving us with 26 years of service. Next up is Renee Carnes, and Renee was a bus driver for us. She retired back in April with 30 years of service. Jane Chafin. Jane was a cook at the high school for 16 years, and Jane retired back in December of 2023, so she's had a little practice at this. Lynn Ham. Lynn is a special education aide. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Lynn is a special education aide at the high school, and she's retiring with 25 years. Marjorie LaFollette, and I don't think Marjorie's here, but Marjorie was a head cook at Raymond Elementary for 30 years, and she retired back in September. Lynette Lewis. Lynette has been the principal at Naven Elementary for the past 15 years. And now there's only one Lynette in the district. She'll say she's the better one. You're not even listening to me. There's only one left now.
But not the best one.
That's what I said. That's exactly what I said. Jerry Martineau. Jerry is here. You snuck in. Jerry was also a bus driver in the district. He retired back in February with 26 years. Tammy Molesky. Tammy is an intervention specialist at Northwood Elementary, and she is retiring with 22 years. Janet Porter. Janet is our adaptive PE teacher in the district, and she is retiring with 23 years. Jill Cements. And Jill has been a secretary at the middle school. I think she was at the high school at one point in time. And she's been here for 40 years. And Bob said he has her honey-do list ready to go. Jody Springer. Jody's a kindergarten teacher at Mill Valley, and she is leaving us with 26 years. And last is Renee Tutak. Renee's not here, but Renee is a fourth grade teacher at Edgewood, and she is retiring with 18 years. So thank you to all of you and all of your years of service, and follow Jonathan for a picture.
Good.
It's not on the agenda.
If I could, I would just say, walking out the door, it's a lot of meals served, smiles at the front office, miles driven, lessons taught, and hearts touched. So we appreciate everything you've done for us and our students and our community. Thank you so much.
All right. Next thing is, let's see here, presentations, and the first one is the athletic director. Mr. Day.
Okay, lost all my audience. And I have to say, looking at 26 years till I can even consider retirement, there's some days where I wonder if I'm gonna get there. So, all right, first and foremost, I want to thank all of you for your service. Obviously, you're a huge part of our district, and I appreciate all the support that you guys give our athletes, our coaches, and our programs. So today we're gonna just have a little snapshot of kind of our year in review, go over a couple things. So I always like to start by just providing these links. I think we do a really good job of showcasing and celebrating our student athletes, our coaches, what they're doing both academically and athletically. So, you know, we put out a lot on social media, so we like to provide those for those that may not have it. But those are the different athletic platforms that you can really tune into to see what's going on. Starting out, we're going to talk about the participation numbers, which are pretty consistent over the last 3 years. But as you can see for the fall, a total of 377 athletes at the high school level. So with cross country, that's boys and girls together, 37. Cheerleading for sideline, 46. Or girls cross country is 18, boys are 37, sorry. Football, 114, which is our largest program. Boys golf with 12, girls with 11. Boys and girls soccer, 44 and 37, girls tennis with 18, and then volleyball with 40 for the fall. And then transitioning to the winter, total of 210 student athletes between boys and girls basketball, 56 there, boys and girls bowling, 17, sideline cheer, 24, gymnastics, 13, swim and dive for boys and girls, 18 on the boys' side, 16 on the girls, boys wrestling, 37, and girls with 29. And then wrapping up with the spring, 327 total athletes for this spring, 46 within our baseball program, boys across 37, girls across 37, softball 26, boys tennis 21, boys track and field 83, and girls track 77. Something that I think is really, really special about our district is the emphasis that our coaches and our staff, our faculty, our guidance counselors really put on trying to support our student athletes, student first, athlete second. And so I wanted to showcase our individual team GPAs as well as the average for the season, as well as what we have for the entirety of the year. And this is based on when their seasons end in the quarter that they're in. So as you can see, cheerleading's got a 3.6 as a team, cross country 3.9, boys golf 3.7, girls golf has a 4.0, football with a 3.2, boys soccer 3.5, girls soccer 3.8, girls tennis 3.8, and volleyball 3.8. So an average team GPA of 3.7 is pretty special, and you know we're really proud of the work that goes into make that happen. And then transitioning into the winter, boys basketball 3.4 team GPA, girls basketball 3.8, cheerleading 3.4, bowling 3.3, gymnastics 3.4, swim and dive 3.3, boys wrestling 2.8, and girls wrestling 3.5, and an average team GPA of 3.3 for the winter. And then spring, which we're finishing up, 3.4 for baseball, boys lacrosse at a 2.8, girls lacrosse at a 3.1, softball at 3.4, boys tennis 3.4, and track and field with 3.4, an average team GPA of 3.2. So for the year, that gives us a 3.6 as a department, which again, I think you don't see in a lot of districts. So we really try to work to make sure that our students are performing at the highest level, both academically and athletically. We've had a lot of success over the last couple years, and that continued again with this year. So in terms of our conference champions, in the fall, girls cross country for the second year in a row. In the winter, boys basketball and boys wrestling. In the spring, softball and boys tennis, which boys tennis was the first time in school history. So making some new records there with that. And I think it's always really important to highlight the leaders that help our student athletes grow and develop. And so, Coach of the Year isn't something that you see that often in a lot of districts. So it takes a lot of work for our coaches to garner that kind of award. And so having 5 within our district, I think, is really special as well. So Luke Sundermeyer, our girls cross country and track coach for girls cross country. Mark Tinklenberg for boys basketball, Nate Andrews for boys wrestling, softball was Jen Segner-Maxwell, and then Brian Ash for boys tennis. And along with that, Player of the Year for the OCC, we've been very fortunate over the last few years to have some really high-level talented athletes within our programs. So this year for boys basketball, Jason Moore was the OCC Cardinal Division Player of the Year. JoJo Eberhardt for the second year for girls basketball, or third year, sorry, which is kind of unheard of. And then Carson Mize for boys wrestling as well. In terms of district qualifiers, like to showcase the postseason runs that our teams have been having. So boys cross country and girls cross country as a team, and the girls cross country team actually won the district championship. Boys golf, we had 1 individual that qualified. Girls soccer qualified to the district semifinals. In the winter, girls basketball made it to a district final and lost in that game. We're district runner-up. Boys bowling, we had 1 individual qualify, and then girls bowling qualified as a team. And then in diving, we had 1 individual qualify through districts. And then boys wrestling as a team, we're sectional champions, and we had all 14 weight classes actually qualify to the district championships, which is the first time in school history. It's pretty special. And then girls wrestling set up a little bit different, but their district their regional is basically the same thing as a district, so they were regional champions for that. And then as of and I think it's important to know that softball plays in the district finals tomorrow. And after starting out 2-6 this year, I don't think we anticipated we'd be back in our 3rd consecutive district finals. So we're excited to take on Taze Valley at Pick Central tomorrow for that. And baseball is currently tied in the sectional final with Upper Arlington. And that's being played just up the road. And then state qualifiers, again, girls cross country has had a lot of success over the last few years, but qualified to state as a team this year. And then winter, we had 1 diver that qualified. Boys wrestling had 3 qualifiers. Girls wrestling had 6. And then our competition cheer team qualified for state within our traditional and game day division. And they also had the opportunity to compete at nationals down at Walt Disney and finish in the top 10. Again, a new mark for that program for the first time in school history. It obviously takes a lot of people to make our programs run. So I wanted to give some insight on just the amount of coaches that we have both at our high school and our middle school level. So the coaching by the numbers, both paid and volunteer, for the fall at the high school level, we have 42. For winter, 46. Spring, we have 40 coaches, so for a total of 128 coaches at the high school level. And then the numbers at our middle school level, in the fall, 20 total coaches, in the winter, 18, and in spring, 11, for a total of 49 and 177 for the district as a whole. So quite a few individuals that are pouring into our kids. And then something I take a lot of pride in is the kids that we send on to compete at the next level, both academically and athletically. And as of today, this number wasn't updated, but we're, I think, at 25 now that have committed to compete at the collegiate level. So again, not something you see in all districts. So we're pretty proud of the accomplishments and the opportunities those kids are going to have. And then I just want to finish up with kind of outlining some things in regards to, our partnerships and some of our sponsorships. So within the athletic department, we try to avoid a ton of fundraising just simply because our boosters do a lot within our community, and we want to make sure that they have those opportunities to support their programs individually. But we try to find some unique ways to increase our revenue or also give ourselves opportunities to upgrade facilities or provide a great experience within our programs and at our events. So this kind of gives you just a snippet into some of the unique ways that we've done that. We partnered with Memorial Health a couple years ago to provide our sideline chairs for volleyball, wrestling, and basketball within our gymnasium. So by giving them the naming rights on those chairs, and you don't see it, but on the back of them it has Memorial as well, that they paid for those. So a cost that we didn't have to associate that was a little over $5,000 that, gives us high quality equipment while also helping them to showcase their organization. And then the same thing with some of our vehicles that we have on site that help us to perform our tasks. So this specifically is the side-by-side that Honda of Marysville Motorsports provided to us. So through advertising on our digital boards, as well as advertising actually on the vehicle, as well as some PA announcements and providing some complimentary tickets, they provide that to us at no cost, which is really beneficial to us as well. And then just two examples of other ways that we really try to partner with local businesses to provide a good experience. We are one of the very few schools that have laser down markers for our football games. So if you come to our games on Friday nights, you'll see that we have the LED markers that you don't typically see at the high school level. We were able to get that through a sponsorship with Greco Law. So those things are roughly $4,000 to $5,000. Didn't have to pay for it because we put their logos not only on social media like you see what this post would be, but also on the individual down markers itself. And then Friday nights are always our biggest events with a ton of staff. Specifically within our press box, we always have a bunch of event staff and we want to take care of them. So we try to provide them dinner when they come to work that event. It gets expensive. Usually a game is roughly $150 to $200 to cover the food that is needed for those. So we acquired a Friday Night Lights press box meal sponsor. So again, they get advertising rights on our boards. We give them some complimentary tickets in our social media posts to showcase that. And then here's just another example to give you an idea of kind of how we upgrade some of our facilities through those partnerships. So our sponsorship company is called PowerAd. That's who goes out and acquires a lot of our advertising that we put in static places. We have transitioned quite a bit to digital boards. So if you go in our gym, we have the digital basketball, volleyball, wrestling board, and then we also have our digital scoreboards, but we still do a little bit of static sponsorship. We try to avoid as much as we can because once you purchase those banners, they can't be changed very easily, and there's always a cost associated versus when we go digital. So if you see here these advertisers that are put onto the fence that is on our new softball bullpen, those were acquired to cover the cost of the new outfield windscreen that's on the softball field. So that softball windscreen goes for about $9,000, but it was no out-of-pocket dollars for us, simply because we had those partnerships in place. And where this fence is, it's when you're coming into Marysville High School, it gets the most exposure for any vehicles that are coming in. So being a numbers guy, we really try to focus on how we can benefit those community members, those small businesses, as well as benefit ourselves and have those great partnerships. So that's where a lot of our focus goes in terms of raising funds, but it's not always funds that we have access to. It's to provide these upgrades like this to give you a short window into what that looks like. And again, here's just a few more examples. So when you're at our games on Friday nights for football or throughout the week for soccer or lacrosse, you'll see all these ads that rotate through. And what's really unique about that is we can provide those analytics to those businesses and let them know how many times their ads are being shown. And it really helps them to see if their marketing dollars are being effectively used and if they're getting a lot of exposure. And then we also have just, again, some static sponsorship signage inside our stadiums on A-frames as well as on the facilities outside of it as well. And that's all I got.
Okay, thank you very much. I just had one question, not to, the GPAs look very, very high. How's that compare to the general GPA? Or do you know?
In compared to just our regular traditional students or other
Yeah,
districts?
yeah, the whole high school.
I couldn't tell
STEM
you.
school.
I would tell you that just from my experience, when I was at the collegiate level, I worked within student athlete services, so focused a lot on the academic side, and then obviously being in this role for 9 years now, is your students that are involved in extracurriculars and sports and co-curriculars, those types of things, typically have higher GPAs because they're your higher performing individuals. So I would argue probably as a whole it might be a little bit higher, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
I saw that too in the classroom. I mean, it just seems like the kids that are involved are getting better grades.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what they're involved in, but they're involved
Yeah.
in school. I guess another question would be, how many, you have about 330 students per
Per season.
season, thank you, that's the word I was looking for. And how many of those are cross or doubled up or,
Yeah, it's a great question. It's less and less nowadays. There's a lot of kids that are trying to specialize. We try to educate the hindrance of doing that. We want our kids to participate across levels, and I think our coaches do a really good job of supporting each other and encouraging them to do so. But I think sometimes the pressure is that if I specialize, I'll have a chance to play at the next level and get the scholarship. But in cross country, we see a lot of those kids that are going to run track as well. Similar to football, a lot of them are track kids as well. So in terms of two-sport athletes, I'd say we're probably in the range of 25 to 30% of our student athlete body. But three-sport athletes, it gets pretty rare. You don't see that very often where they're playing in three different ones. I would say we're probably in the means of 4 to 5% maybe.
thank you. Any other questions?
Joey, I think I mentioned to you one time in passing that my father was an athletic director, and he often said, it's not whether you win or lose, but how many paid to get in. And not looking for any detail, but how are our ticket sales? Because I know ticket sales is a primary source of funding for our athletic department.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know, that's a great question, Dick. We are on a cash basis, so we don't receive funding from the district to cover our expenses. So we really rely on our ticket sales, our pass sales, and our sponsorship to fund everything that we do. So ticket sales are certainly really important for us. And it's part of why we really try to make the game day experience special for families, so that when they come in, they feel that it's a little bit different than a typical high school event that they go to. But I think we get a lot of support from our community, and people like to show up and show out for our events. So we do pretty well. It's always, you always want it to be a little bit higher, but I think in terms of our pass sales and what we get from ticket sales, it pretty much balances out what we need to fund our department on a yearly basis. But that's where we have to make those adjustments. If you have a fall that is filled with rainy days and you don't have great turnouts for football, that's going to impact you greatly. And then in the winter, the same thing. If there's a lot of poor nights of snow and poor weather, those are going to go down. And a lot of times it depends on your opponents as well. If you're playing schools that travel really well, your ticket sales are going to be up. And we think about that stuff when we're trying to schedule games. We don't put that at the forefront of why we play certain schools or certain teams, but it's certainly an aspect of that we keep in mind, knowing that if we have a school that's going to bring a lot of people, it's going to help our bottom line as well.
Yeah, some of the events that I've been able to go to, the crowds are very much into the games, very supportive of the kids. And I know last year when girls basketball made their run, there was phenomenal turnout in support of them. And this year there were various games and events and so forth where people really turned out. So I agree with you. I think there's a lot of support for the Monarch athletes, coaches, and I know that I really appreciate all the hard work, planning, and extra time that goes into everything that takes place. So, and appreciate the work that you do. Athletic directors spend more time in their office or on a field or doing something than they do at home. So
Yeah, you're married to the job, that's for sure.
yeah. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Mr. Day, do you know how many lay coaches we have or a percent?
Yeah, we're sitting at about 73%. So it's pretty substantial. And I was actually talking about this earlier today of, kind of how we function with, our meetings with coaches and kind of our process for really trying to stay intact. And it's getting more difficult because a lot of our coaches not only are lay coaches that are not in the district, but they're lay coaches that live in other districts, so they're farther away. So we try to limit, how much out of season time that we have meetings. We do a lot of communication digitally to help that. But yeah, it's a lot less that you're seeing of teachers that are also coaches within your building.
I assume that's probably pretty comparable to other districts, though.
Yeah. I would say across the country, you're probably looking around 65% is what lay coaches are, across the board nationally. So we're right in that mix.
Has there ever been any interest in boys volleyball?
I haven't seen a lot of it. I think there's been a few kids that have, kind of posed the possibility of it, but it's not been a huge press to this point. And we have a process that we go through if we're going to ever add additional sports. Sustainability is a big one. Do we have the interest that's going to be consistent over a few years? Do we have the resources that we're going to be able to provide to that program? Not just from a financial standpoint, but when you think about boys volleyball in the spring, we have a lot of programs that are going at once, right? We only have one AD and 2 athletic trainers, so the coverage for that is obviously a factor of that to make sure that we can provide them the great experience that they need. But there hasn't been a big push for that, but it's certainly been brought up.
It kind of surprises me because I would venture to say most OCC schools probably have a boys volleyball program.
Really, it's probably about 40% maybe. It's grown a little bit, I think, in Central Ohio, but it's bigger in other parts of the state. But to kind of give you perspective too, boys volleyball didn't get recognized as a OHSA sport until 2 years ago when girls wrestling did. Girls wrestling took about 2 years to actually do that. And boys wrestling really was its initial inception into the club status was in 1998. So, it's been around for a long time, but I think the numbers haven't pushed dramatically with it, but it's certainly growing.
How did the first ever day of giving, I don't need numbers, but just the first day of giving year for us go with the athletic department?
I think anything is a success if we're pushing the needle forward. Did we get to the numbers that we probably needed to? No, but we know that with change, with new things that you're going to roll out, it's going to take time to really establish that and continue to push the importance of what it's going to do for our programs and our vision for what it looks like long term. But it's a start, and we're continuing. The interesting thing about it is it was a one-day event, but it never actually goes away. So through the foundation, that opportunity to give to that fund is going to continue to be there. So anybody at any point can go and actually donate to it. So we continue to see some funds that are coming in to support our program. So we hope to continue seeing that rise.
So you've been put under a bit of a challenge with the $2 million in cuts that the district had to make. And we're basically paying for head coaches. And I know that there's been a few exceptions based on the size of the sport, but the money for the head coaches, that does come from the school district, correct?
Yes.
Now we have a large number of coaches that are being paid by booster groups. Mm-hmm. Do you know kind of what kind of percentage we're talking about there?
Oh, I don't know. I don't want to give you incorrect numbers with that, so I don't know exactly what that is. Okay. It depends on the program too. Some programs weren't deeply impacted by that, maybe didn't have a ton of assistant coaches within their program versus others that may have had, 5, 6, 7, or 8 coaches that were cut due to, those budgetary constraints. So it's really situational, okay. But it certainly has an impact across the board on our functions and, how we're running things.
And thank you. You made the comment also that athletics isn't necessarily funded and that you're pursuing, sponsorships and stuff to help fund the athletic experience. Do you kind of run that on an independent budget then? where you're just allocating, you're seeking sponsorships based on what is needed?
Yeah, it's kind of twofold. So it's obviously understanding the need of what we are needing to do just to function on a traditional basis, and trying to reach those certain goals. But it's also, again, when we go out and try to partner up with local businesses, it's not within the thought process of give us money and then we can just benefit from it. It's trying to develop that relationship that's two-sided, that they're going to really benefit from it as well. And I think when you do that, you build those relationships and those connections, and more businesses want to then be a part of that because they see the value of being involved in our programs and the impact that it has on our kids. And obviously with our community growing and new businesses coming in, we have those opportunities. If it's a positive experience, we can retain the ones that have done it, but also go out to those and say, we have similar businesses to you that are doing this, and it gets a little bit competitive for them to want to be a part of that as well. But I think when they see the impact that athletics has and just the reach that you can have on kids and families and the community, most businesses see the value in that and want to be a part of it.
I absolutely agree. I see. Just roughing the numbers kind of together, we're looking at roughly 1,000 kids that are involved in athletics at the high school level. That's amazing. And you're really building these community relationships. The schools and the community are intertwined irrevocably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we have a transportation. Task force, I guess.
I think you're ready.
Okay. Well, it's been a year. I don't know if it's exactly a year I want to remember in regards to transportation, but it's been a year. I remember thinking as the school year was getting started and we had some staffing issues that the goal was to get to the finish line. And, we had a change in directorship even right before the school year started, and there's a lot of uncertainty, even to the point where we made a pretty dramatic move in changing the bell schedule mid-year. And through all of that, here we are. And I think the change we made in mid-year turned out to be for the better for sure, because things certainly stabilized for us. Todd and Melissa and their team and our drivers did an amazing job to make that work. There was a fair degree of risk that went into doing that mid-year, but I do think it turned out well for us. I don't think it was ideal when we were going through that. At some point, we had thrown out there the idea that we were going to bring a task force together, a group of parents, staff. Honestly, it really turned out to be anybody who wanted to participate. But we were going to put a group together and try to come up with a sustainable and more serviceable model for our transportation service. So we did that. We went into this with a pretty open mind. I mean, as far as I was concerned, as far as Jonathan was concerned, as far as Todd was concerned, we weren't necessarily trying to guide this in any particular direction. We wanted to find the best solution for the problem that we were facing. We brought a group together that I think was also very open-minded to what the possibilities may be. They were very willing to converse and discuss a number of options. They really provided for us in the first few meetings some parameters, some bookends as far as what what the levels of acceptability might be, from everything to sort of what we were doing now to the schedules you'll see proposed, and we even got proposals or ideas where elementary schools were starting at different times. We didn't have a set schedule for K-4, so really there was a lot on the table. And again, there wasn't a particular agenda to try to end in a specific spot. We just wanted to come up with a solution and find the best model we could put forward. So we had 4 meetings. The last meeting, of course, came after we had put out one of the models we came up with. Meetings were running long, so we told Jonathan he couldn't come anymore. But we got through it. And then each one of those meetings was kind of it kind of progressed from the preceding meeting. So we started, as I mentioned, with what's possible. And then we kind of narrowed it down to, well, you gave us what's possible. Now we want to put some parameters on that. You know, here's a contract day. Here's some of the restrictions we have in the number of hours per day, or the number of days in a school year. And so we start to rebuild that schedule. And then we started to add in the transportation constraints. And we just kept as they give us ideas, we just kind of keep narrowing it down until we found something that we could come forward with. And in that time, what came forward is something that really was working well on paper, was this idea of swapping Creekview and K4. I think you all have seen it, but the model that's up there, we called it Draft A. Again, the big thing here was that it put Creekview at the end of the sequence. What we had discovered was, and we had worked with a consultant on this as well, who actually came to one of our meetings, was that we just discovered we were getting kind of jammed up at Creekview. So we built a model that kind of created pods of buses. And obviously the big thing again was that Creekview moved to the end of the sequence, but we also pulled out and separated the high school and the middle school, which we had mentioned long ago when we talked about the mid-year shift, about decoupling that part of the system. So that was also in this model. Again, we put this out there, we got a ton of feedback. We got it both from the task force and from the community. But we kept working. As I said, there wasn't any particular agenda or target to hit when we got out. We just wanted a solution, but I wanted to keep working on this to figure out how we could use the model that we had built and get Creekview back in its regular sequence. A lot of the feedback we had was it was quite a disruption to make that swap. So, but quite honestly, at the time, I just wasn't coming to me. It just wasn't working. Had a bit of a beautiful mind moment by myself back there about 8 p.m. on a whiteboard, and figured it out. And so we came up with, and in putting in some of the feedback we got, we came up with what we had called Draft B, which, quite honestly, looks fairly similar to what we're doing now. I would say when you pull back the curtain on that, there are significant differences in how the transportation model itself works. One thing that survived, though, was this separation, or I should say the decoupling of Bunsold and the high school. And so just to review that, right now we have, I want to say it's 24 buses that congregate at, it's 21 or 24 buses, I can't remember what, but it's a lot. They congregate at Bunsold, and they load up with middle school kids, and then they go over to the high school, and then some of those kids switch buses, but high school kids get on, and then they kind of scatter from there. It was a system that was put together with great success for a long time. Tina Schrock did an amazing job for us, and it worked for us. We have just gotten to a point, both with population growth and geographical growth, that we have to make a change, and we have to look at it differently. And we believe that this will work. Now, the committee we had, or the task force we had, not an overwhelming fashion, but they did see draft A as a transportation solution. It was slightly better than draft B. But again, we did solicit lots of feedback. We tried to look at this from a holistic perspective and came back to B, and that's the one that we're recommending. Kind of in a nutshell, the thought was, after we came back with this one, we're able to work it out with the kind of behind the scenes sort of pod model that we created, and we're able to make it work in a hypothetical environment and on paper. The gains that we got from this we felt were sufficient, and perhaps we could get still quite an improved system without the disruption of moving Creekview in the sequence. Just a couple of the highlights again. What we gained from this, we have more buses servicing Creekview. We've separated or decoupled the high school and Bunsold. The times that are set up and the way we've distributed buses, it does, again, in the hypothetical environment on paper, it does seem to have the entire bus length experience, the length of day shorter, meaning that if we have, we're not seeing kids on the bus for over an hour at the moment, and that is one of the goals. The committee set some goals, and that was one of them. We are mirrored routes here, meaning that we are eliminating transfers, so kids who had historically hopped from one bus to another maybe 2 or 3 times in an afternoon would not be doing that anymore. That's a big part of why I wanted to decouple those. And again, I think I mentioned it, but their length of time, so their total experience on the bus on a daily basis, again, the target there was to shorten that up. We do have kids who are on the bus for quite some time. Also, and obviously we want more predictability. The mirroring helps build that because we're not depending on the transfer service. In other words, there aren't a set of buses waiting at a particular school for another bus to arrive, so those kids can kind of scatter onto buses. So we were able to maintain those goals with draft B, and again, reduce the disruption by keeping Creekview in its traditional slot in the sequence. So we don't plan to stop the examination of what we're putting forward. We'll keep looking at it. The hope is to keep that task force together and bring them back at some point during the year and just review kind of how things are going. You know, as for now, we're putting the draft B, as you see in front of you, as a recommendation for the start and end times for the 24-25 school year. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Any questions? That's a lot.
Yeah. It's been a lot of hours put into this, I can tell you that.
Yeah, one of the things I know whenever we try to hold meetings and get groups together and so forth, sometimes our attendance is not what we would hope that it would be. And not wanting to get into numbers and those kinds of things, but we had 2 surveys that were done, and then there were 3 or 4 different in-person opportunities to come in and sit down and talk about this or ask questions, do that kind of thing. Do you feel like that we've got a reasonable response from parents in the community concerning their questions and their feelings about this?
Yes. The first survey that went out, that wasn't real convincing. The first survey that went out certainly wasn't scientific. I mean, there was not a binary question to be answered there. So we took that and sort of just categorized the feedback and used a lot of that to drive where we needed to go with it. And to be quite honest, the majority of the feedback did address the the elementary start time or the Creekview sequencing. The second one that went out did have a choice that could be made. I don't remember the numbers. What's that? Yeah, I mean, it was 280 some responses, I believe, and pretty overwhelmingly in favor of the draft B that we got. Do I think that's a decent sample size? I do. Given our population, to have around 300 responses, I think is an appropriate sample size. Couple that, we did have some in-person meetings. We heard basically the same comments. I think you'd always like to have a little more participation in those things, but you get what you get. And I would add that there was some internal reflection as well in regards to, I think both of these systems work, but we also have to kind of look at what's an appropriate disruption for the amount of gain we think we'll get. And while I do think A gives us some substantial gains, I think we get pretty far down the road with draft B. It definitely shows to be an improvement from where we are right now. So doing that and taking, I think, a step in the right direction, a pretty sizable step in the right direction, and trying to minimize impact and still get that positive result, that was something internally I think we discussed quite a bit as well. So, you took the feedback, we did our own reflection and analyzing what we were looking at. We've tried to look at this in like I said, in a hypothetical environment to make sure that what we're working on makes sense and looks like it's going to work. I do think the decoupling of the high school and Bunsold is honestly by itself is a huge gain for us in the timing of distributing kids both home and to school. So that's a big gain by itself. But if you're a student, either one of these were going to dramatically benefit you. I mean, especially for little kids. I mean, if you've watched this happen and you've got, a second or third grader having to get on, 2 or 3 buses throughout the afternoon. I mean, I think getting away from that is certainly desirable.
As I looked at the two, seemed from the district standpoint of efficiency and moving the buses in terms of the time and avoiding some of the, I think you called it the jam at Creekview.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, that was really desirable. But when we heard from the public, their concern was, when the kids are actually showing up at the front door, and does it meet their family needs in that respect? So I agree with you. I think there was a good, strong response in terms of the number of people that expressed opinions and views on this. And I know that the improvements, as you just said, are going to make our rider experience much better. And that if we can do that and address the concerns that parents have about how this change affects their household, I think we're accomplishing a lot. And I really appreciate all the people that are on the committee that have indicated a willingness to continue to look at this and to think about this topic and to see, are there some things that we can do a little bit differently to keep trying to get better. So thank you, and thank all the members of the committee, please.
Thank you. And I just would add to one of the tools that we have not had before. We changed our routing software a year ago, which allows us to do things like build a system that is not in operation. So like I referred to this hypothetical environment a few times. It allows us to mock routes. It allows us to run some analytics that we haven't had before that can give us a degree of confidence as we move forward with this, to have an idea of how it's going to play out. And as Todd and Melissa have built these routes, keep asking them, are there any red flags or where are we at? And they feel good about it. Drivers seem to feel good about it. We'll continue to work on it through the fall once we, summer once we've settled on, what the schedule is. But it's nice that we have a tool that gives us a degree of confidence moving into the summer. We should be, hopefully, ahead of where we usually would be, in midsummer, just because of the tools we have available to us.
Yeah, I know that typically the first 2 to 3 weeks of school are a bit of a guessing game as to where some of the kids are, and trying to, I know that's a challenge just to tweak the system with the kids that are actually standing at the end of the road, waiting for somebody to come and pick them up. And I hope that once we get through the initial sorting out that takes place every year, that people will, the students particularly, will feel that their situation has been improved and their experience is much, much better.
I was just wondering, with the recommendation that you all will be making, will next year families still be encouraged to take their child to school, or do we feel we have enough staff and enough flexibility in the school day where that would be eliminated?
Do not anticipate making that ask. We're in a much better spot as far as staffing goes. The way this system's set up, it's a more even distribution of kids, meaning that, if we were to lose somebody, it's easier to absorb that loss than maybe it had been in the past. So the short answer to your question is no, we do not believe that ask will have to be made.
I also was wondering if those different draft schedules, was there any financial analysis, or was there a difference in fuel costs, miles on buses, those types of things?
Well, it's hard to really get into that without building the routes out completely. Will we have an increased cost in this? I believe we will. Now, that said, it's really Creekview and the elementary schools, there's probably no real mileage change there. Where the difference will come in is the decoupling of high school and Bunsold. Now, I don't think it's going to be, say, just because we're dispatching from Bunsold and dispatching from MHS, they're necessarily going to double. I don't think that's the case. It's unlikely we're going to have a sibling on every bus where we're totally sort of following ourselves around. I don't think that's the case. But yes, there will be, we'll have increased miles. There's no way around it. To have a true financial analysis of that, it's hard to do that before we've built all the routes out to know what the actual mileage is. And we can do that. I mean, we have reports we submit to the state that give us the cost to move a mile. That will come out in the first quarter of the year, and we'll know pretty quickly what the impact of that has been. I will say, and I probably didn't say this before, that was discussed a fair amount in the task force, in the meeting, especially early on, as it became apparent that we were valuing the mirrored routes and seeing that a path to do that was decoupling those two. And to be quite honest, the overwhelming consensus was that we needed to prioritize the experience of the students and the families over what that cost might be. Again, it's hard to say. We'll know that relatively quickly once the school year starts, but given where we've been and what we've gone through and where we wanted to get to, that group and we just believed we needed to make sure we were maximizing the student experience, and that does come at some cost in regards to mileage.
It may very well be worth it. I was just wondering if you
Yeah.
knew like a
Don't
dollar
know.
amount
Yeah,
associated
sorry.
with that.
Come back to me in like September, October, maybe. I can probably get it to you.
So just a quick, I did attend one of the meetings, and it was very interesting listening to the feedback coming from the people involved. The interesting point is, I think the feedback is very specific to their family in every case, and they even, agreed that things that they maybe were a little bit upset about in 2 years, they would not be upset about because that wouldn't affect them then. So it's very challenging on your part, and I want to acknowledge how challenging it is, because every family's opinion is based on their personal experience, and you have to look out. What, we have 6,000 riders in the district.
Well, yeah, we have 6,000 or so students,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So the routes are simulated. We have bus driving positions filled. Parents can have confidence that for the next year that, things will go okay. But people don't sign up to be assigned onto a bus until August 1st, I think. Is that correct? So you don't really know who's going to ride the bus till after that August 1st, when they go in and make their decision
Well, we don't have like opt-in. So kind of to your question about the cost, you have to assume everybody who's eligible to ride will ride. That's what makes this such a kind of a tricky puzzle. And to Dick's point earlier about kind of the confusion at the beginning, that there's a lot of it's because of that. So come August 1st, it's not necessarily that somebody is saying, I want to ride the bus. We're routing everybody. Everybody who's in the eligibility zone is put on the bus. So like if you look at the routes as they come out, you'll say, well, you can't get 150 kids on a bus in the afternoon. Well, no, we can't. But we know those, like high school seniors probably aren't riding the bus, for example, but they're on our list. So, it shapes itself out after a week or so because you start to figure out who's on and off the bus. Now, yes, around August 1st, typically the rollover happens in the data system that allows us to really hone in on those routes. Now, because of our new software, I don't want to get in the weeds here, but it does allow an internal transfer. Our previous software did not allow that. So when I spoke about being ahead of the game, hopefully in August, like we've already started to do some of the things that we could do none of until August. So we're already able to build routes out that we might not have been able to do before. Because obviously there are some assumptions you can make. A third grader that rode the bus last year that has the same address, you can assume that person's riding the bus again. So you can work on some of those assumptions and you can start to build your bridge, but it's not going to connect until around that August 1st time when the SIS really pushes everything over to the next school year. And it is tough because you kind of have to you got about 8 days to get that settled in before. Now, I'm going to give a little plug for our app, the Stop Finder app. Starting the school year is going to help tremendously. That gives parents access to school bus information, real-time updates on where their kids are on the bus and things like that. The more parents that get on that, the better. You can set a geo zone where you can get an alert from where the bus is. That will help out a lot at the beginning of the year too, because a lot of the challenges at the beginning of the year are, especially with the little ones who maybe not have a cell phone and can't be tracked on Life 360, there's confusion about where's the bus. Well, there's a good way for you to know. So.
Thank you. I had a quick question about 8 months ago or 9 months ago when we first discussed changing routes, changing Bell's schedule. The problem that we were trying to solve was a driver shortage. It's my understanding that we have the drivers. that was the only reason why at that time we were looking at changing the bell schedule. So can you help or refresh us why it's now time to change the bell schedule again?
Well, as I said earlier, I don't think that we ever really intended for that to be the final product. We needed to do something that we could get through that sort of season in the year. We were short. We had to change what we were doing. I think I can't really speak to the educational side of it, but I think there were some issues with start times and things like that, or finish times. But I don't think we ever went into that with the idea that that's how we would start the next school year. I don't remember exactly when it was. We said that we put that task force together, kind of move, to figure out what that would be. But I think it was always the intent that we would move forward with a different schedule. And I would say too, yes, the staff shortage was kind of the catalyst for that change, but it really just sort of exposed what our problem was, which was we had a system that had worked for many years that honestly had just sort of been built on itself for a long time, and the system itself just kind of collapsed underneath us, and so we needed to address that as well.
I'm sorry, so you were saying it was really a ridership issue, not a driver shortage? I mean, I guess let me rephrase. Has our ridership significantly increased over the last 5 years for the system that we currently have no longer works? Is that correct?
I wouldn't disagree with that. Our ridership has increased, and the way that we had run our system was based on a much smaller ridership, an uneven distribution of students that created difficulties for us, particularly when when we had staff out.
My second question is, this schedule reduces our instructional time by 5 minutes per day for elementary, Creekview, and Bunsold. Was that a direct intention of the task force, or how did we arrive to reducing the instructional time?
Well, I'll let Jonathan answer this one.
So with that was a topic of conversation and information the task force had as well. We're not looking and wanting to reduce instructional time, but we are well above state minimums with instructional hours. And some of the concerns given back through the surveys, the task force, is when kids are getting out on that last tier. So we still have to create enough gap time between the tiers, because back in the fall when we made those changes, we talked about how 5 minutes makes a huge difference for a driver. So we wanted to help make sure that we kept those gaps in between the tiers. So as traffic continues to increase in our community, delays occur, our drivers aren't stressed on making their next stop in time. They have time to get there. So we didn't want to lose that. Yet at the same time, we needed to honor what parents were saying about we need our kids to get home at a good time at night. So that's where the 5 minutes came in at, so we can maintain those gaps and be respectful of the families as well. And two, we're well above the state minimum. Like for an elementary, a deduction of 5 minutes, we are still 27 days above the state minimum requirement. Again, we value that instructional time, but we felt it would be very impactful for the sustainability of the overall system. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. My personal concern is every student in our district was impacted by the pandemic. We have higher class sizes now, and now this is a second reduction of instructional time in 8 months or 9 months. And so when I joined the board, this was not the direction or my vision of, hey, let's do this. I understand this is in our lap, but the second reduction of time it's concerning to me because with less staff, we need more opportunities to connect with students, and that's my personal concern with that issue.
Yeah. And two, when, like, the reduction at the elementary level in Creekview of 5 minutes, this is the first reduction for our K-6 kids, the 5 minutes going into this schedule. The second reduction only applies to Bunseled. Bunseled, we did a 5 minute because of that gap need. We also saw that as well coming into the second round. Some of the feedback too was for Bunseled, there's always been a challenge with staff coverage and concerns of safety before school and after school. So what we needed to do is create more time where staff can get to work, make sure that they're at their duty spot and they're ready for kids to come in the door. So that additional 5 minutes coming off for Bunseled is going to make a huge difference on that duty coverage, especially in that morning when kids are coming into the building. That's always been a challenge for Mrs. Koffenbarger, without a doubt. So I know her and her staff really appreciate that 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Yep.
The only thing I would add to that, Mr. Ferguson, is we did receive significant feedback from parents during the process that we're already way over hours, just make everything shorter. So I understand your perspective, and that's my perspective too, but we did receive feedback that, a significant amount of feedback from parents that challenged that as well. So just as a thought.
Yeah, we had teachers that worked in other districts, and they're like, whoa, you guys are way higher than what we are. And, but again, we want to protect that instructional time, you know, and when we think about Bunseled, that first 5 minute, then that second 5 minute, ultimately it's about a minute from almost each period of the day, which over time it does add up. I get that. But also what we can do is really take a hard look at how we can maximize that time that we have the most for kids, even with that 5 minute reduction. So we'll take a hard look at that for sure.
All right, thank you very much. I would say I like that decoupling of the high school and the middle school. You know, not having those kids on the same bus, I think that's a huge safety positive. And also not changing buses in the parking lot is a huge safety positive for our district. I think that's where accidents happen if you look at schools. So, thank you.
The second part of that, this presentation really is, Mark, your resolution speaks to a reduction in instructional time. And so Mark is going to kind of cue that up around some, boy, my mind just went blank, professional development that's required with the science of reading. And so he'll talk a little bit about that and our needs with that.
Yep. So I will cover, make sure everyone can hear me here. I will cover two primary things as part of my presentation this evening. One, I'll discuss the requirements for schools as they pertain to high quality instructional materials for English language arts, as well as some of the other training requirements for schools in the state of Ohio as outlined in House Bill 33. And then I will also take us through the implementation timeline for these materials for the 2024-2025 school year, including some proposed dates for training and professional learning as part of that implementation. So according to House Bill 33, schools in the state of Ohio have several new requirements in the upcoming school year. They include the requirement that schools utilize high-quality instructional materials in English language arts that come from an approved list of materials provided by the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, and they are tasked with developing that list. Beginning no later than the 2024-2025 school year, districts must use what is referred to as core curriculum and instructional materials from the department's approved list. Materials in grades pre-kindergarten to grade 5 may not use what is called the 3 cueing approach to teach students to read. And then also underneath of the same Ohio Revised Code, the Department of Education and Workforce shall establish a list of evidence-based reading intervention programs that are aligned with the science of reading and strategies for effective literacy intervention. On top of all that, House Bill 33 also requires up to 22 hours of professional learning on the science of reading for kindergarten through grade 5 teachers, and that training is to happen outside of school hours due to the stipends being paid by the state of Ohio for that training. So that's 22 hours of training, depending upon what track you're in for K through 5 teachers outside of school hours. So that takes me to our implementation timeline. So I'm going to kind of start all the way back in July with House Bill 33 and get us all the way to the present day and potentially moving forward. So July 4th, 2023, House Bill 33 is passed in the state of Ohio. August 10th, schools in the state of Ohio were notified of the high quality instructional material requirement for English language arts materials, that it would be coming, that was something we were going to have to do. August 28th of 2023, schools in the state of Ohio were asked to complete a high quality instructional materials survey. So the Department of Education and Workforce had schools around the state of Ohio complete a survey to say, hey, what are you using for English language arts at this time? Then on September 21st of 2023, the Board of Education approved the 24-25 school calendar. So at that point, we knew a requirement was coming, but we didn't know if our current curriculum materials would or would not be on the approved list at that time. Then from November 13th to December 13th of I should say 2023, it's a typo, my bad, the Phase 1 high quality instructional material approval window was opened for vendors in the state of Ohio. So vendors had the opportunity to make submissions to the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce for approval as a high quality instructional material curriculum resource for English language arts. And as part of that work, the Department of Education and Workforce was tasked with putting these approved materials essentially into 3 buckets. A curriculum resource could be approved as a foundational component. It could be, which predominantly focuses on letter and sound knowledge and acquisition, phonetic concepts, et cetera, so early literacy skills. They could be approved as a core curriculum. So core curriculum materials included language development and acquisition skills in combination with comprehension skills. And then the third option that the Department of Education and Workforce had at their disposal was what's called a core comprehensive program, which met the requirements of all of those components. They had foundational skills instruction combined with core instruction components as well. Then not until February 2nd was the initial Phase 1 list of high quality instructional materials for the state of Ohio released. So we didn't know until February 2nd which of our materials that we currently utilize would or would not land on the approved list. And in this instance, the iReady Teacher Toolbox, which I've used extensively, it is aligned to the science of reading and best practices in literacy instruction. Curriculum Associates, the vendor, did not submit a proposal for approval in the state of Ohio. So the resource we had been using did not land on the approved list, which meant that we were now going to have to find a new curriculum to implement for the 24-25 school year to be compliant with the law as it was written in House Bill 33. February 2nd, so literally the day the list came out, we began identifying viable early curricula for Marysville schools. So the moment the list hit, we went to work finding what tools were going to work for Marysville schools based upon our vision for teaching and learning and what our literacy framework was, and ultimately what was approved through the state of Ohio. Then on March 1st, there was a continuation of the approved list. So there was a series of Phase 2 approvals that were released on March 1st. So they expanded the initial list that they provided. So our list changed a couple different times throughout those phase releases. And then between the window of March 20 and April 3rd, we had identified 2 viable curricula for Marysville schools, one being My View and the other being Into Reading. And then not until April 16th were the final Phase 2 approvals released. So that is the list that we have today. So it was not finalized and official with a signed, sealed, delivered with a bow on it until April 16th of 2024. Which takes us to part 2. So on May 2nd, we had actually, after seeing the Phase 2 approvals and done our work in-house, elected to select the Into Reading by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt curriculum as part of the implementation pilot by our adoption committee, which takes us to May 16th today, where we would provide an overview of the high quality instructional material ELA implementation plan with our Board of Education. And then beginning on June 12th, we will have a voluntary implementation pilot kickoff with our kindergarten through 6th grade staff. So we're looking at a K through 6 implementation with this product versus just K through 5. It doesn't make sense to split a building on 2 different curricula. So we're going to keep things consistent for training purposes. So we're looking at a K through 6 implementation. And then on August 13th of this year, so right before we get ready to come back to school, we will spend time engaging in professional learning on that product with a vendor team. So we'll actually be bringing in trainers from HMH to provide professional learning on the Into Reading curriculum. And then part of our proposal is that we gain a September 20th date. So rather than just having one day to essentially learn a curriculum and get off to the races with it during the school year, we utilize a date in September to build momentum with that curriculum, which then takes us into the next month. On October 18th, we would continue that professional learning and then do initial mop-up and finalization with the proposed April 21st date in 2025. And these proposed dates of September 20th and April 21st are going to be very critical, not just for the implementation of the high quality instructional materials in terms of the comprehensive core curriculum component, but there is also the requirement that we are going to have to utilize high quality instructional materials for reading intervention as well. So if our vendor through school specialty does not submit a proposal and had not submitted a proposal for approval as part of reading intervention materials, we are also going to have to train intervention specialists and reading specialists as well during the course of the upcoming school year. And those constituencies also have professional training requirements for the science of reading professional learning through the state. So there are a number of training requirements and implementation requirements required by the state of Ohio through House Bill 33. And that concludes my presentation for this evening.
Any questions for Mark?
Don't know where to start. That's a lot.
It was an ordeal getting that timeline put together.
I bet.
Yeah. And just getting to where we're at today, quite frankly. Yeah.
What's the overall cost going to be?
I am not in charge of the finances.
It just depends. There's parts and pieces to the programs that we can purchase depending on how the pilot goes. We may choose to not purchase certain parts of it based on teacher feedback and just the benefit that we get out of certain parts of it to where we can still stay aligned with the state's expectations. So can't give you a hard number, but also too, there are some alignment dollars that will come back to us from the state of Ohio to offset that cost.
And that's going to add, the state of Ohio is set aside reimbursement dollars for districts, and also in our PI dollars, we have our rotation for curriculum in there, so it would be aligned to our PI budget as well.
And Bill, what I can say as well is Chris Campbell is a hard negotiator.
Yes.
Good.
So, yes, he is very, very skilled at that.
I was just going to add something very quickly, though. We were deliberate with our current English language arts adoption cycle, knowing that there was the potential for this requirement to occur. So rather than making a purchase and then having the potential to wholesale change it out the following year, we opted to wait and see what was going to land on the approved list before it was all said and done, just to be fiscally responsible.
You've mentioned K-6 training. Is there any requirements 7-12?
Yeah, so the law actually just affects kindergarten through 5th grade as it stands with regards to the science of reading, but we'll continue professional learning in best practices with regards to structured literacy, the science of reading, and effective literacy practice within our 7 through 12 space as well, which we've been running a disciplinary literacy cohort and series of cohorts for the last couple of years as part of our comprehensive state literacy development grant.
Something I wanted to go back to you, Bill, on the cost. These materials would be purchased out of PI, Permanent Improvement Funds. It is not operating dollars that would purchase these materials, and it would fit within the budget that's already been established throughout the years as part of the adoption cycle.
Great.
Who are the developers of My View and Into Reading?
Let me go back here. I believe Into Reading is a Savvis product. Yes. Or no, it's a HMH. The My View is a Savvis product. There we go. So HMH is Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, they actually used to be 2 separate companies, and there was a merger in there. But My View is a Savvis product. Yep.
If you said this, I apologize, but what's the reasoning for 2?
Oh, we just identified 2 viable options. So we wanted to have options on the table dependent upon what was going to work best for Marysville schools. And ultimately we selected Into Reading as the most viable, most appropriate fit with regards to what we're about as an organization.
How many different systems were on the list?
Well, I can tell you here really quick. There are approximately 36 separate curricula that have been approved in various buckets, though. Okay. So the core comprehensive list is larger than, for example, the core curriculum list, which is larger than the foundational skills list, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a ballpark.
Yep. Yeah, when the initial list came out, there was less than a dozen on our list. So it has grown significantly as we've gotten into the phase 2 approvals.
Thank you for your presentation. Did I hear it correctly that the state provides a stipend to take this training?
One of the trainings. So not training for the curriculum. They provide a stipend for a separate training on the science of reading that is required for educators in the state of Ohio.
And when does that training occur?
So educators have until June 30th of 2025 to complete that training.
At their own time?
That is correct.
Okay. So when we approved the calendar September 21st, there's 6 professional development days on the calendar. Is that correct? Or that's what I show, I should say. I'm sorry, that's a very pointed question to put you on the spot, but I count 6 professional development days. Is there a reason why we need 2 additional? Because this training only impacts kindergarten through 6th grade. So we have other buildings that will have professional development 2 days. Is there a reason why we cannot use the 6 that we already have on the calendar?
So some of our days have different uses for different grade bands. So while it may look like a professional development learning day for everyone, it only affects, for example, K through 6 or 7 through 12. So for example, like the Learning Beyond the Classroom days only impact the higher ed side of the organization versus the lower grade levels.
Yeah, and some of those PD days on the calendar as well, Jermaine, they're kind of / teacher work days. Teachers have days where they can work on grade cards. So those are filled into there. And 2, some of the PD days, based on the teacher workday requirements for grade cards, et cetera, there may only be 2 hours of PD. So being able to get deep into the work and the learning experience, you need more than 2 hours.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's why I asked the question.
So all those days aren't full day PD days.
So was there a way to schedule these professional development days where it did not impact students?
There would be, just my initial reaction to that, if we did, it would be a pretty large financial impact because we would have to pay teachers for their additional work days. So we're trying to stay within the requirements of the contract for what teachers get paid for. If not, we would have to pay them if we had to require them to come in, we would have to pay for it.
Okay, thank you.
Can some of the state funding be used to pay them over the summer for that?
The state funding is linked to the other training they have to take up to 22 hours of, so it's specific to that training. And then the reimbursement can only go to the resources. So it's not money freed up to pay staff.
Yeah, because Jermaine was asking my calendar. On the calendar, we have, I think, is it 178 student days or 180 student days?
Well, it depends. If you're a senior or a freshman or a kindergartner, it's kind of all over the
Yeah,
place,
well,
but
yeah.
approximately 174.
Okay, all right. And so then the PD days are in addition on the calendar. Those would be additional days that show up on the calendar. So it's always been my thought that where you plug in the professional development, where you plug in some other things that go on our calendar, doesn't reduce the total number of days that kids are in attendance of school. And that's because going back a few years, we moved the start of school back into the middle of August so that we complete the first semester before the winter holidays. And then we're holding graduation Saturday, and we've got the 174 student days built in between those two endpoints, and we've plugged in all of the other kinds of things.
Yeah, with those 2 days that are needed for supporting our teachers with their learning experience, it will reduce the amount of student days by 2. I spoke to it earlier. Again,
Yep.
we're well above the state minimum. And when you look at 2 days of professional development, the return that we should get for those 2 days, for the experience that kids get with that K-6 materials, and how much better our teachers will be because of that training, we'll see the impact of those 2 PD days without a doubt. I mean, because they're going to know and understand the materials, they're going to be able to collaborate and dig deep in it. And they need to learn. They need that experience. They need that time.
I just have an additional question. For the instructional coaches, are their training requirements begin before the start? Like when are they, is it part of the same PD days, or are they coming in earlier before this calendar? I know, I know it's kind of maybe I just thought of that question just now.
Yeah. Instructional coaches are exceptional teachers, and they've done a ton of research already and studying. They've been highly involved with the review process. So they're already ahead of the game with familiarity with the programs. And knowing them, they're not going to stop learning after the last day of school. They're going to continue to come. They'll probably more than likely be able to participate in that voluntary session, but they're going to continue to learn and read at home so they can come back, because they're going to be the main supports for our teachers throughout the year. They're going to be the go-to, and if they don't know the answer, they're going to find it and they're going to support them. So it is critically important for them to be well-versed with those materials. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. And we're now up to superintendent's report.
Okay, I'll try to speed up a little bit. Current enrollment is sitting at 5,607 students, and we've been watching K enrollment. We have 350 kindergarten enrollments and 34 alt K, so collectively approaching that 400 student mark. We will definitely see that increase over the summer. As you're all aware, I sent out an invite earlier this month to start parent council for next school year. It's an open invitation. We've received about 130 participants, people who are interested, parents that are interested. So great problem to have, except we were hoping to get about 15. So we're looking for a way to still engage with all of those participants. It is open till the end of the month, and I've committed to keeping it open to the end of the month. That was the communication. So we'll be working on that in the summer and mind mapping how we could engage with everyone who's interested. I think that's fantastic. We also sent an open invite to be a part of our facilities task force. So we've invited some community leaders, business partners, and parents. That group will have a hard cap at 30. It's a steering committee, and they'll be working with us directly to forecast, respond to input that we receive, and kind of guide the process. So we'll be working on that. We've actually received in excess of 30, so I will try to find another role for other people who are interested as well. Currently with hiring, we have one administrative position open, which is a school psych. We have 6 teaching positions open. 3 of the 6 are intervention specialists, and we have 14 and a half classified positions open at this time. Graduation, you all should, if you have not already, this evening be receiving another email with a reminder on times and et cetera. We'll be watching the forecast. It's not been great all week. We've been watching for Saturday. The backup plan is Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Or if there's a window of time we can get it in on Saturday night, we're dedicated to do that. We might make a shorter, fewer speeches kind of window and take advantage of that. So stay tuned to that communication as well. This week, our math, science, and social studies scores came out. ELA should be out next week. So we'll put that initial data together, and we'll be sharing with that with you shortly. Let's Talk. We sent out a community postcard earlier this month, or maybe the end of last month, and we hosted a town hall meeting earlier this week. I would say it was fairly well attended. I think every seat was full, just about, except for the front row. We received some great questions. We did record that meeting. Tommy is working on establishing the tab on the website, so that will be visible as well as parents can or community members can tap into that. And also this morning we were able to talk to the Realtors Association on Mr. Smith's invite. I think that went well also. So I think next week we're at a dance studio. We have several events coming up in the community, so really starting to work that outreach and kind of get our message out there as well. This past week and some of this week, we held our mini Monarch appointment sessions. I know Mr. Ferguson has a newly enrolled kindergartner, so we have families come in. They receive our literacy packets that we shared last year. We were able to partner with our community groups to do that again for homework over the summer, I guess, and practice for families. So those have gone really well. And the last item I just wanted to address quickly, there is a community survey that's circulating that we've received some feedback. I just wanted to be clear that the district is not funding or a part of that survey. It would be illegal in essence for us to fund such a survey. So we did not, nor could we, sponsor a survey that has been distributed. I think that's all my items.
Okay, we're up to the treasurer's report. Make it brief.
It'll be quick. James, do you have my? Perfect, thank you.
So the main thing I was going to point out is we do have the five-year forecast on the agenda tonight. There's no changes to the forecast compared to what I presented last month, so I'm not going to go through that again, but I thought this was worth pointing out. This is a slide that we've been using on our Let's Talk presentations, and it's really just a real high-level look at the forecast, but you're going to be seeing this, so I thought I would show it to you if you haven't seen it already. In essence, it's even a higher-level look at what I normally present as my first slide on the five-year forecast. So it shows our operating deficit beginning in fiscal year 25 through fiscal year 28. It shows the impact of that operating deficit on our ending cash balance, the ending cash balance dropping quickly. It highlights the operating deficit of $5.3 million in fiscal 25 that would put us on fiscal watch per the auditor state's guidelines. And then in fiscal 27, when that operating deficit jumps to 10.4 million, we would be on fiscal emergency. So just wanted to point out this slide is something that we're going to be, using because we think it kind of encapsulates that financial picture. So that's all I have, unless there's any questions on the forecast or anything else.
I just want to say thank you for adding the fiscal watch and the fiscal emergency. I was at a Let's Talk, and I think that was some feedback, and so it's nice to see that feedback in action. So it's a nice indicator.
Any other questions? Thanks, that was a brief one. I guess that takes us to board president's report, and I'm going to basically throw out all my items except one and say May 22nd, we'll have a work session to talk about our board protocols for next year, and also operating expenses and our contingency plan in case the levy doesn't pass. So not looking forward to that meeting, but that's when that's going to happen. And that's about it. That's of vital importance on mine. So, and that takes us to student achievement.
Some good things for our students taking place at Creekview. They had a group compete in the Ohio Mathematics League contest. They were 8th out of 23 competing schools. At Bunsold, there were students that 8 Bunsold students competed in the Junior Japan Bowl for the first time ever. On May 6th, 7th grade students participated in a second annual Pathway Fair. It was neat because they partnered with both ECHS and MHS on that. And at the high schools, ECHS has $1.5 million accepted in scholarships, over $4 million offered, and MHS had an academic signing day, first one ever.
Any questions? Thank you. That's pretty neat. And we're on to legislative report.
Yes, I'll try to keep this short. The OSBA had a legislative conference. Board President Keck, Dick Smith, and we attended. We met with both met with Representative Bill Reineke and Representative Tracy Richardson. It was those meetings were productive, and that was nice. As the only update I'm going to give is, we talked about House Bill. Sorry, I lost my spot here. The cell phone policy bill is what I wanted to talk about. That was signed yesterday by the governor, and so I know some of our handbooks. I'm not sure if I know some of our handbooks include cell phone policies. I'm not sure if those meet what the legislative intent is, but I did check that out, and just knowing that maybe the policy committee may have to take another look at that, and that will be on our to-do list probably over the summer. So that's all. I'm going to keep my report short, and I will not do any student wellness update or student health and safety,
Great.
Whatever it's called. Sorry.
Yeah, we got it. And now we need a motion to accept the draft minutes.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded that we adopt the minutes from the last meeting. And roll call, please.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes. And then we're on to approval of policies, and I need a motion to approve those at this time.
So moved?
I'll second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on those?
Just want to thank the policy committee for just informing us with this. It's pretty simple, just updating language for the reading skills and assessment intervention.
Okay. Any other? All right. Ready for a vote?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes. And then we need a resolution, let's see here, to approve the five-year forecast.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion on the five-year forecast?
I would just keep my comments short. Obviously, the five-year forecast calls for some action by us in our community. I encourage everyone, there's 20 pages of this forecast with a lot of detail. It's actually nice to take the time and read it, because if you have questions about the assumptions, it tells you in the 20-page PDF. And so you have to maybe take some time and sit down and read through it. There are some charts and graphs that can give you some quick visuals, but it is very informative. And I believe that the assumptions in this forecast are fair, they're accurate, and there's something I can have confidence in. I know there's questions about the revenue side. However, if I rather us be safe than sorry when it comes to revenue. Expenditures, we know our expenditures are, we see a significant increase, but those are very known variables. And I've attended some training with OSBA and listened to the Director of Educational Workforce, and some of the things that are coming down the pipeline are going to even significantly put more demand on our district. And so, while I favored a lower request from our taxpayers, there's more coming down the pipeline in terms of like math, readiness, other staffing positions. And so we, as a growing district, and not a lot of districts are growing in Ohio. There's a lot of districts in Ohio that have declined enrollment. So it's actually, I think it's a blessing that we get to connect with more kids because we're doing education the right way here. It's not a burden, it's a blessing, but we have to live up to that responsibility. And so those are my comments just now, but I encourage everyone to read the detail of the 5-year forecast and ask us questions if you have any. Thank you.
No other discussion? We'll take a vote on that then.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes. And the next thing we need is a motion to approve the 24-25 bell schedule. We've heard about that already. The adjustments of instructional hours for the elementary schools, Creekview Intermediate School, and the Bunsold Middle School, and the adjustment for the 24-25 school calendar.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion that we haven't already had tonight on this issue? Yes.
I just think that a lot of work went into this. I think, I think it is noteworthy that we came up with a plan. We put that plan out there. We got additional feedback. We changed the plan. In regard to that feedback, I know sometimes people say we don't listen. We do listen, we hear, and sometimes, what we hear, we're able to actually implement, and it makes good sense for all of the students we have, and I think this is a great example of that.
Yes.
So with this resolution, honestly, with the bell schedule and the reduction of, educational instructional time. Was very lukewarm on the idea and the concept. However, I have to commend the district for the process. We like community engagement, and there's task force, there's surveys, and there's a lot of community engagement to draft this model for the transportation schedule. I am concerned with our bus fleet. That's my personal concern. We have not had a fulfillment of bus orders, and since I've been on the board, it seems. So that's with increased mileage, that's a concern. However, the student experience is something that it's hard to counteract that, and taking decoupling some of those routes. And I'm just going to have to trust the process and trust the plan here. And I'll be supporting it, even though I'm lukewarm on the idea. Thank you.
Okay, can we have a vote on that?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, and that takes us to, we need a motion to approve the amended school compensation agreement with the city of Marysville.
So moved.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I have some.
I would just add
Okay,
a
go
little
ahead.
bit. So
Yes.
originally, this applies to our residential TIF properties. It comes back to our request to, if we pass new money moving forward, that we would recognize the entire benefit of that as a school district. Originally, that was approved with a cap of at a time bound, I would say, to 2025. This agreement removes that, so it's good for the remainder of time. So if we passed a new levy every year for the next 10 years, who would want to do that, right? We would see the benefit of each one of those moving forward.
Correct. And I would say that, for the people who are accusing us of not working with the city, there's a positive result of working with the city. I think that was a big win for us, just under, $1 million on this particular levy, so.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, we've mentioned before that we've been in conversation with the city, and this is some of the fruit of those conversations. And we still have other issues, and we still have other situations which we're currently addressing. But I appreciate the city taking this position. We were in the position of just saying, would you? And they, after the discussions, said yes. So I appreciate their willingness to listen and to initiate this change in policy.
Yes, Mr. President, I want to echo similar comments. The new city council is in their 4th or 5th month in office, and we have this agreement that they've already approved themselves. And, this was kind of a deciding factor in my decision when we looked at the income tax levy versus the property tax levy, knowing that we can answer some of the voters' concerns who lived in the residential TIF areas. They wanted their dollars to go to the schools. If they vote for increased taxes, they want those revenues to go to the schools. And the city council heard that feedback. Our work group, I would even count Sue Devine, Bill Keck, and Dick Smith, they voiced those opinions to the city council, and this agreement came out within, and city council takes 3 readings, right? And so this has been a process, but it's finally here, and I think it's a win for the district, because we know what our long-term future is. We know that this agreement is not just about the next levy, but it's about preparing ourselves for the future in the next 10 years. And so I just give them the credit that they're due for being a good partner with us, and look forward to that continued partnership.
Any other discussion? We're ready for a vote then.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. And that takes us to a resolution for from the Board of Education to support the Marysville Exempted Village School District. I can't read. Let me read it. Start over. Recommend to approve the resolution requesting Board of Education and Marysville Exempted Village School District to submit to the electors of the Library District of the Marysville Public Library the question of a replacement of an existing tax or current expense of the Marysville Public Library. So anybody want to restate that as a motion, or are we?
So moved.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I will point out again that, as I have when these came up earlier, the library, we serve as an appointing board for the trustees for the library, and we are and I don't know the correct terminology, the taxing authority for the library. So their board has to ask us to put a levy on the ballot. But our school district derives no money. We have nothing in benefit that we receive from this particular levy. The operation of the public library, the Marysville Library, is under the control of the trustees. This board does not have any responsibility or any supervision of the library. And so I think we know that reading they always say reading is fundamental. And, so the library offers opportunities for kids to have additional reading resources and additional reading experiences. Our library serves a very important function in our community. And so the trustees have asked us to put this on the ballot and allow the community to express their support. And so that's why I moved for us to do this.
Any other discussion? You took all my thunder there. All right, we're ready for a vote on that.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes. And then we're up to approval of the treasurers. And we need a motion to recommend all of the treasurer's items be approved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on these?
There really aren't nothing out of the ordinary there, so unless there's any questions, I don't have anything to highlight.
There's an appropriation for the athletic budget. Do you know what that? It's like a $2,000 or $2,850 for student activities. Is that?
It's most likely it's a student activity, not the athletics. So within those 300 fund appropriations, there's the athletic funds, but then there's also student class, like each individual student class, like the word's slipping my mind, or like the yearbook or the prom fund or all those different things. I don't know which specific one that is, but I could find that for you.
Thank you.
We're ready for a vote then.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes. And now we're on to recommend to approve the human resources items to be included in the action items approved by the superintendent items. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I just have a few things that I would point out. First of all, our list of 2024 graduates are on there, so I'm sure they'd be really excited if you push this one through, for sure. Also, handbooks and fees for next year are on this section. All of our fees going into next year are the same, except Bunzell Middle School is actually decreasing by $5. So I wanted to point that out. We do have one trip, and it's for a group that's going this summer as well. So otherwise, higher supplementals in my normal items.
Any other discussion? Ready for a vote then?
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes?
Mr. Cap?
Yes. And then we have, we need a motion to approve the 23-24 school year. Didn't we do that, superintendent items? That's what I thought. Okay. Let's see. And we got the action items also, didn't we? So we're down to comments, my favorite part. So we'll start down here with Mr. Smith.
In board notes, every single principal noted that we've reached a point where state mandatory testing has been completed. And you could almost read the sense of relief in their words. I also looked at and pay attention to the future readiness reports for each of the building. And we've had a tremendous number of job and career presentations and different kinds of events in all of the elementary buildings and at Munsold, Creekview, as we get toward the end of the year. And there were even events where some of the high school students were going down and doing presentations in the middle school in Creekview on various career opportunities, career paths that they have taken going through our system. And I thought that was really, really neat. This last few days that we have, is next Wednesday is the last day of school. There will be a plethora of events that will be taking place celebrating the end of a great year of learning. And I will also point out that on social media, I keep seeing that this student is going to go to Ohio State, or this student's going to go to Miami, or this student's going into the workforce, this student. And I really am excited about that, because our goal, our mission is to make sure that every student that walks across the stage and gets a diploma has a plan, that they have hope for something going forward. And so seeing that on social media reinforces my belief that we're achieving that in a variety of different ways with each and every one of our students. So I'm excited about Saturday. It's going to be a great evening, rain or shine.
I'm very excited to see our students at graduation, and congratulations to all our students and staff making it to another end of the school year.
So I want to express my thanks to Joey Day, Ryan Walker, Mark Gallagher for your presentations tonight. I really appreciate all the time and effort, the hours and hours that must go into all of these activities. Also, the collaborative spirit that you're using, engaging with the parents and community members. And also I want to thanks to Diane and Todd. I attended the Let's Talk on the 14th, and it's a great opportunity for the larger community to understand the transparency of the school. We are being very, very transparent, and people just need to ask if they have questions. And I look forward to having further discussions with community members in the future.
Congratulations to all of our students for completing the year, and our teachers. I want to also recognize our PTO volunteers. I know many buildings, there's so many programs, at least at the elementary building level, and sometimes there's so few PTO volunteers that are carrying a lot of the weight, but the students do recognize who those individuals are. They see it and they appreciate all of our PTO volunteers. Even for the big events like the extravaganza at Edgewood, it enhances the student experience and it supports our teachers. So I wanted to give them a shout out. Also, it's probably one of the best news tonight is our parent council, 130 individuals interested in serving on the parent council, and then the facilities task force is 30 members or more. Plus, we had the transportation task force that seemed to be filled. So there's opportunities to serve the district and contribute, and there's a lot of people in our community that are willing to do that. And so that's a good sign. I see that as a positive indicator for our future. So and have a good night. Thank you.
Okay, and then I had a couple things. One is our retirees tonight. That's an awful lot of talent leaving the district all at one time, and it's hard to believe, but a couple of those individuals were actually here longer than I was. They were here when I came to the district, and they haven't changed a bit. I got older, but I'm not sure they did. But I'm glad to see they're going to have some time off, and I know how important that is. Also, we have, the rest of the board may not know this, but we need to go back into an executive session at this point in time, and so I need a motion to do that for the purpose to consider confidential information related to marketing plans. So number 8 of 121.22.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right. We need a vote on that?
Mr. Smith?
Yes?
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes. And so we will adjourn from there whenever we get done.
Yeah, we will take no action.
We will take no action in that meeting, and
Or
we-
after the meeting.
or after, and we will take a 5-minute restroom break before.